Good evening, and thank you for joining this live Tenant Farmers Association webinar, which is titled, Is the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, AHDB, making good use of our levy money? I am Robert Martin. I'm the National Chair of the Tenant Farmers Association, and tonight we will talk with Graham Wilkinson, Chief Executive Officer of AHDB, about the future vision of AHDB. So while we are waiting for people to join us this evening, I would like to thank our event sponsor, Roy Thorne's solicitors. Roy Thorne's have kindly agreed to support our TFA virtual events and knowledge share videos until March 2025. For those of you who don't know Roy Thorne's, it is a national law firm steeped in agriculture. They have 90 years of experience advising landowners and tenants alike. Their lawyers are active in farm tenancy policy, and they get the bigger picture. So whether it's a succession application under the AHA Act or the new FBTs, a dispute with your landlord, a share farm agreement, or a collaborative natural capital agreement, Roy Thorne's is there to advise and assist. But before we get started, I've got some housekeeping rules to talk through. If you have any questions for our speaker this evening, don't hold back. Just type them in the Q&A area found in your Zoom toolbar, and we will have around 30 minutes of live question and answers once we've heard from this evening's guest speaker. If you miss any of tonight's webinar, you want to re-watch it at a later date, it will be recorded, and once edited will be available on the TFA's YouTube channel. To find our channel on YouTube, just search at Tenant Farmers. The TFA webinar library features all our past virtual events, knowledge share teachings, and any key news snippets. This video library features all our past knowledge share teachings, including helpful short videos on rent reviews, succession, improvements, and also applying for new farm tenancies. We encourage you to pay a visit and subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when we upload new content. To find us, search at Tenant Farmers and click subscribe. Before moving on to this evening's main event, as mentioned earlier, I'm Robert Martin. I'm the TFA National Chairman, and I will be your host for the next 60 minutes. It is just over 3 years since the horticulture and potato levy payers voted to shut down their AHDB sector boards, and just over 2 years on since DEFRA's consultation on AHDB, which looked at how to deliver a more effective and focused organisation, giving value for money and greater accountability to levy payers in the future. Since then, AHDB has secured a new Chief Executive Officer, Graham Wilkinson. We are delighted that he has agreed to join us to explain how far AHDB has travelled towards meeting that objective. Before I invite Graham to speak, I would like to share some of his career highlights. Graham is an experienced agriculturalist with a deep understanding of best practice production methods, particularly across dairy, beef, lamb, pork and poultry sectors. He has gained considerable practical knowledge from his time working on his family tenant farm, so we'd like to get that one in, as well as Tesco, Arla Foods, and now AHDB. Prior to joining AHDB on the 1st of March 2024, Graham led the global agricultural team at Arla Foods, supporting over 8,500 cooperative farmer owners across 7 markets and managing the delivery of innovative commercial milk concepts on farm. During his extensive career in Arla, he worked in both UK and global roles, heading to steer and develop a data-driven on-farm sustainability agenda, both for specific commercial customers and the wider cooperative. He has spent time in the retail sector at Tesco PLC, joined the company in 2011 as agriculture manager. During this time, Graham was integral in the implementation of Tesco's Sustainable Farming Group within the MFPE category, moving across to the dairy category later. Working alongside Tesco's Sustainable Dairy Group members, he developed the company's agriculture policy and strategy for the dairy category, while collaborating with the commercial and technical teams. Graham has also developed the Tesco Future Farming Foundation, which was established to support new entrants and new farmers to launch their careers in agriculture. In his role as CEO at AHDB, Graham looks forward to promoting and unleashing the full potential of British farmers and growers in the future, and is an absolute in the view that British agriculture is among the very best in the world. I'd like to invite Graham to the floor to talk about his vision for the future of AHDB. Graham.
Excellent. Good evening, Robert, and thank you very much for inviting me on this evening. It's great to join you, and quite an impressive introduction there as well. Wasn't quite expecting all that, but really pleased to be with you. I have, as you mentioned, I joined AHDB on the 1st of March this year. So it's sort of 7 months into the role. It's fair to say that it's been a very sharp learning curve, actually. And I think one of the things that I will talk into, which I've definitely found, is that having worked within the industry all my career, I actually thought I knew what the role that AHDB actually did. And I'm continually surprised every day by things I find out about AHDB, the work that the teams do, that to some extent, we haven't been very good in being able to get that across to our levy payers as well, and to inform them. But I suppose, coming into this role, it's a huge privilege to be in this role. I'm a firm believer that with the opportunities, and there are some challenges as well, which we all aware of, that if an operating model such as AHDB, fully functioning, really effective in the work that it does, I firmly believe is needed now more than ever. And I think there's some great work that's already being done by the teams, and I think that without doubt there has to be more work completed as well to support our levy payers. So I think from my perspective, I think just to sort of talk through a little bit of the sort of where I see as an organisation today. I suppose fundamentally we focus and we prioritise our efforts in 10 sort of key areas. So research and knowledge, so looking at research and knowledge exchange and how we deliver independent evidence and insight. And that word independent is a really important role. We're a non-commercial organisation. We are data-led, we're evidence-led. And I think that's a really, that's a USP to us. We have no ties. Ultimately, we are independent in the work that we do. Market intelligence, I think, is becoming more and more important. It's becoming more of a volatile world, and actually, so a strong market intelligence team looking across the supply chain, demands, pricing, consumer trends as well, so we can be better at supporting and helping levy payers be prepared for what's coming down the line. I think is so important. Export support is an area where we do a lot of work, and having just literally returned back from CIAL in Paris, where over 130 countries were represented, ourselves being one. We had a stand there. We had a number of exporters from the UK on our stands, 285,000 visitors to that event alone. Been a fantastic few days being out there. Ultimately, for an example, red meat sales are totaling 1.7 billion. They did that in 2022. We matched that in 23, and we're on track to actually hopefully surpass that figure in 2024. The marketing support, where we deliver some marketing campaigns, I think is really important as well, and you'll see a lot of visibility on that on TV screens and through social media as well. It's a really important part in getting the strong message out to consumers about the real sort of positive and the importance of British food and farming. With that goes so it coincides with our reputation management as well. So we want to be able to champion the great work done by farmers and levy payers across the industry, and it's really important that as an independent evidence-based organisation that we are there to help defend the reputation of our industry. Training and development is another area that we look at as to how we can support levy payers in staff training, and also environment, which we know is an area that is picking up. I think the organisation, we are strengthening our work around the environment. It's really important. I think examples like our baselining project, which we can maybe talk a little bit about, is a real important project for us at the moment. I think it's one of our important projects at this moment in time. Events and groups, out the independence that we have, we're able to bring groups and organisations together. We're also working with consumers and school children, where we're supporting the education of food and farming to school children, and clearly animal health and welfare, where we work collaboratively and take a sort of a leadership role in many areas in supporting the science and work around animal health and welfare. What does that then mean? Well, actually, from a deliverable, so I am a great believer that people talk about collaboration, but actually I think AHDB is an organisation. I want to be able to lead this as an organisation where we're not just talking about stuff, we're actually doing it and getting on with that. And an example of that would be some of the knowledge transfer groups that and the work that we're doing there. So this year alone, 2024-25, we've got 28 international events, 386 engagement knowledge exchange events. We've got 321 face-to-face events, 16 conferences, and 65 webinars. So we're very active in this space around how we can actually. It's so important that we're out there listening to levy payers, and I think how we deliver these events and how we continue to develop and evolve these events so they actually deliver for levy payers is really important. So I suppose there's areas that we're looking at. So from a leadership perspective, areas around the environment, areas around, I suppose, digital transformation, data, etc. I think is key to our industry in the future. How we share best practice, how the work that we can do can actually help inform future government policy. When we look at some of the expertise, and I'm very fortunate to lead an organisation that is absolutely surrounded by some fantastic people that work for AHDB with a huge amount of skills. So when you look at the science, veterinary work, that we've got a number of vets that work for the organisation as an example, research analysts, etc. Financial and legal, got account management, human nutritionists as well. I think that's an area that is really important. Some fantastic marketeers that are really working on behalf of our levy payers, championing the work that they do, and also exports. And I've got first-hand example literally this week on the great work that they do. And ultimately, everything that we're there to do is designed to ultimately support our levy payers, our farmers, growers, our abattoirs, and the processors. If I give an example of some of our success stories so far, if you take the Let's Eat Balanced campaign, I think it's a fantastic campaign that continues to go from strength to strength. It has reached 47 million adults across the UK. Social media impressions generated 94 million, and ultimately 7 out of 10 consumers saw our TV adverts. So it's a campaign that continues to strengthen, and I think it's an important vehicle in getting that message out. Other areas, so from a dairy perspective, we've recently signed a deal with Bucks, the British University College and Sports, where we're working with students across 165 universities, where we're actually demonstrating the importance of dairy within their diets. I think that's a really exciting campaign. Educating the consumer. So we work with the British Nutrition Foundation, so a very close relationship with them, where we're actually teaching, offering resources to teachers as well to be able to download and support within the teaching. We've got 20 farms that are piloting, delivering safe and impactful school farm visits, and actually we've engaged over 2,600 students in hands-on cooking experience through our ingredients in schools pilot. So those are probably some of the areas. If I drill down into the sectors that we cover, so beef and lamb, if I give an example, so red meat exports 1.7 billion in beef and lamb, 19% increase in the volume of beef offal exports across non-European markets, and ultimately 15 million on-pack stickers appeared in supermarkets as well, supporting our campaigns. From a pork perspective, our campaign around Feed Your Family for Less with British Pork campaign, that saw an uplift in purchase content of 6%. 44 million adults saw that on television, and actually we've got 570 million worth of pig meat exports across 105 markets. And I think the work that AHDB and the team do in helping to open and access markets really helps to deliver that. And what does that then mean from a return on investment? For every £1 invested in that, there's roughly around about a £10 return in sales of pork. Dairy, lots going on from a dairy perspective, not just in some of the export work, which continues to grow. We recently had the showcase, the dairy showcase, where we had, I think, 49 importers from around the world here in the UK, really excited about British dairying and what it has to offer consumers around the world. And there's a number of trade deals that have been developed on the back of that, but also our Milk Every Moment campaign, over 9.5 million digital impressions. So we're certainly getting the message out there. And then from a cereals and oil side, absolutely vital sector for us. 2.2 million hits on our arable market intelligence campaign. Our recommended list, it was 80 years of the recommended list this year, so it was fantastic to be at my first cereals event, meeting the farmers down there and actually recognising the role that the recommended list has played over those 80 years. And obviously RB 209 nutrient management guide as well. So a lot of work that's done there from a C&O perspective as well. So lots happening. I think we need to be better in sharing some of this work with our levy payers, with the industry, and with farmers and growers around the UK. But I suppose what sort of am I looking at? So I talk about very much a laser focus on our levy payers, and that's something that I've came in with. Ultimately, we only exist because of our levy payers, and we should never forget that. So delivering value back to our levy payers is something that I'm absolutely focused on. What I've done on that, so I've restructured my leadership team. So within the senior leadership team, each of the sectors is represented on that leadership team, so that we absolutely are able to make sure that we are 100% focused on what our levy payers want. And this is where I encourage our farmers and growers to come to us with thoughts on where we can do better, where we can step up, areas that maybe we're not prioritising and need to be prioritising as well. We need to listen, and that's something that I've been doing in my first 7 months in role, and we will continue to do so, and the team are absolutely committed to that. The next area is around demonstrating strong and effective leadership, and I think I've talked about this in the past, where AHDB has probably been a little bit too quiet for some time, and I think we do need to step up. We do need to demonstrate that. And I think there's examples where we're doing that from the baselining as an example. I suppose the recent challenges around TB as well, where we're out there in the media, in the press, really supporting and defending, our industry, using evidence, using the facts, using that to be able to get the point and get that message across. What's also important, so managing an organisation as well, is that these changes that I'm putting in place require a change of a mindset of culture and of the people. So I want to be able to attract and retain the very best talent within our industry. So it's important that the culture is set in the right place to be able to deliver that. And I think we've got some fantastic people that work in the organisation that are really up for the challenges that we're facing. So changing that culture. I come from very much like commercial background, very performance driven, very much results driven. So that's the world I've been living in, and ultimately, that's what I'm bringing to AHDB. And I think with that, it enables us to deliver faster, deliver smarter with the work that we're doing, and actually celebrate a bit of success along the way. And I think the final area I'd like to talk about is around organisational growth and success, because I genuinely believe that by being able to demonstrate value from return on investment, I'm already having a number of organisations approach me about actually there's more that we as an organisation can actually do. So I do think there are opportunities for future growth of AHDB. That's one of the reasons why I joined the organisation. I know that it's experienced its challenges, and you referred to them at the very start, Robert, in your introduction. But I want to be able to lead this organisation into a new chapter of delivery for our levy payers. I believe that the ship is starting to turn around. We've got a huge amount of work ahead of us, but I'm genuinely excited about that challenge and that opportunity. But that's probably just a little bit from me, and I'm sure that we're going to get into a few questions as well, Robert. But 7 months in, I've learnt a lot, but I've really enjoyed my first 7 months. But I am a person that likes to get on and do. So I'm looking forward to now be at the point where actually some of those ideas I'm now making those changes, putting them in place, and really excited. But never always listening as I go.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, Graham. You've given us a real whistle-stop tour of your time within HDB, and I think I may have recounted to you once before, we both started at very similar times in our roles, and you seem to be running on at a huge pace, and I seem to be on a bit of a canter at the minute. So I'm more than happy with that. But it's very interesting to see some of the things you were mentioning there. How you need to be a provider of independent information. You need to help prepare the levy payers for the future. And I suppose a lot of that is to do with a future post-BPS and how do your businesses cope with what's coming down. It was good to see, you mentioned there, you had about 285,000 visitors regarding your export tour there, which is absolutely fantastic. And also in the interaction with school children for education, especially with nutrition. And I know we've been an hour on myself there. The Open Farm Sunday has been a tremendous opportunity to offer out the farmer community to the consumer for them to see what goes on, whether that's in our best practice. You also mentioned about the conferences and also your webinars. I was on your webinar the other night regarding Blue Tongue, and that kind of gave me quite a good insight of what was going on. It seems to be running a bit of a pace at the minute, and it was really good to hear the up-to-date information the vets were on, and I found that very informative. And you also mentioned about sharing data regarding sharing best practice as well. I know in my milk groups we've always done that, being very open, and I know how much I've learned from other colleagues when it came to being open with one another. And once you can share, then I think the businesses are better off for that. And I learned in that you can't manage what you don't measure. So that was probably an important part that I learned. So really, it's an opportunity for people to ask questions or to give feedback. As I said at the start of our webinar, there is a question and answer section, a section at the bottom of the web page. So if you want to put questions into there or comment as we go along, please do so. We've been fortunate that we've had quite a number of questions come in prior to the event, and I've had one or two to email through to me today as well. So I think we'll probably kick off. And I know I said to George earlier in the evening that there may be one or two where I may wish to bring him in as well. So we will just take it as we go along, and we will see what happens. So I think we'll kick off tonight. I have a question here from a member in Somerset. What is your comment on the Riverford farm washing campaign?
Yeah, so I think obviously we're aware of that. I think I talked a little bit about the I suppose the reputational work that we do and the insights work that the marketing and insights team actually do, and we do work with retailers as well. So we provide information to them on the research and insights that we have. But I suppose all I can really say on that is that we are fully aware. The feedback that comes back is that there is a high level of trust for British farmers, and we should never forget that. And so that we do feed that into the retailers. Trust and transparency is key. And there is a high level of trust in British farmers in all the insights work that we do. That's what comes out very high. So we do share that with the retailers, so they are aware of that. Clearly, I can't comment on individual supermarket brands, but I can assure you that that insight is being fed into those retail teams. Robert.
Well, that's good to hear, because one of my biggest critics in my life is my mother, and she goes shopping at all these major retailers, and we mentioned there about trust and transparency, and she said, "What about all these false farm names? It just seems to be all wrong." And for me, as a personal opinion, that frustrates me a little bit, especially when being a milk producer and being involved with the Isle of brands, whether you're Lurpak, your Anchor, whatever it is. And I like to think that that's a true representation. So for me, from a personal point of view, that really frustrates me, and especially my mother. So, and I can't always put that one to bed, I'm afraid. So it is, and I understand your point regarding commenting on retailers. We have a question here from a member from Cambridgeshire. Do you agree that the Groceries Code Adjudicator should have a farm to fork remit? If not, why not?
Yeah, so I think obviously the DEFRA has appointed the fairness adjudicator for the farm to supply chain. And I know that our chair, Nicholas Sapphire, was part of that interview panel. So that I suppose this area obviously remains a very contentious area, as I think recently evidenced by the new milk contracts and also issues from an eggs perspective. I think if we look at I suppose some of the challenges that sit behind this area and really sort of drill down into it, I think one of the factors that we can't get away from is that from a UK perspective, when we look at fairness across the supply chain, margin redistribution, but go beyond that, today we have the third cheapest food in the developed world. So the cheap food culture is a real challenge in the UK. there needs to be better, fairness across the supply chain without doubt. But equally as well, it's there's an underlying challenge there around cheap food. So it's certainly something that we are very, very close to. I think this is an area where I often why we so active in the export perspective. Then I think, well, actually there's twofold really, because a lot of the export work that we do is around balancing the carcass when you look at it from a red meat perspective, and that's really important, because without balancing the carcass, then that's adding value and ultimately being able to use the parts of the animal that UK consumers aren't willing to purchase. So that's really important, and I think also it's giving opportunities. And I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I get to speak to overseas buyers. We've got a fantastic story. We've got a lot to be proud of. And actually, when you speak to them, they're very interested in from a food perspective, from a farming perspective, safety, quality, the standards that we operate to as well. So I think, the opportunities, offering opportunities to farmers, being able to balance the carcass, I think ultimately is an area where we sort of lean into, and I think that helps to develop markets and helps, is one area where we're able to look at to potentially, add value. And I think, you talked earlier, obviously I've come from a cooperative structure, from Arla Foods, and, I think, farmers, working together, whether it's cooperative kind of structures for, long-term gain for farmers working together, I think is certainly something that is really important, and I think it's certainly something that we should be looking further into. So there's greater fairness across the supply chain, areas for opportunities to be able to add value, and actually other areas around greater collaboration across farmers and across the supply chain for the benefits as well. I'm not sure whether, hopefully that sort of answers your question, but clearly this is a massively sensitive, and I can totally understand that where the question's coming from and the frustration amongst farmers.
No, I can see that, and you mentioned there about how the third cheapest food cost to the consumer, but any food producer knows, listening in this evening, food is not cheap to produce. We've seen that. I think those figures came out the other day that how the cost of dairy inputs have gone up over 40% in 2019, and how do we recover that back from the marketplace? And it's interesting also that we talked about the export market. Are we saying that we are trying to short the market a little bit, or are we saying we're going to try to keep the home markets full, but just concentrate on the parts that the UK consumer doesn't consume anymore? So
I suppose the reality is that balancing the carcass is fundamental. That's what, whether it's the fifth quarter when it comes to pigs, ideally, we're looking at opportunities for some of those high-end cuts, and we do that where we've got putting fantastic British beef into high-end restaurants in Singapore. It's fantastic to see, and there's a demand for that. We've back to that storyline that British food and farming has to offer, but there's no getting away from the fact that actually being able to balance that carcass, those cuts that I remember, some of those cuts, even as a child, that I used to eat, and you can't buy now, and ultimately, but there's consumers, there's buyers around the world, and I've spent 2 days on the stand at CL Paris, and they're looking for those cuts that we don't, the British consumer will not eat, but it's so important, and that's what they're looking for, and that's ultimately adding value, being able to balance that carcass. So I think it's not about shorting the market. I think it's also looking at seeking those opportunities. I think if you take, say, lamb as well, that does a fantastic job in lamb into Europe, into France, where we're seeing sort of growth in that area. It's about looking at all the opportunities there. and actually how we can look to add value and play our part. From an AHDB perspective, what we're to do, we're there to sort of facilitate the opportunity for importers and exporters to do business. We are there to support with paperwork to open up markets, and we've supported do that through opening of 105 markets so far. Working with our exporters, working with DEFRA, working with the Department of Business and Trade, and so we play a vital role. Some of that work is unseen. Quite a lot of that work is actually unseen. You go to CL and it's quite visible, but don't underestimate how much work goes on behind the scenes to be able to get those markets open. It's not easy, and actually a lot of it is about relationships, and that is so important, about ultimately developing those relationships and strengthening them. That's where the value. But domestically as well, the halal is hugely important market in the lamb sector, and we've actually got a report coming out in the next month which showcases that. So we're looking for opportunities here in the UK, and I think the marketing campaigns as well is how we actually add value and create those sort of food inspirations for UK consumers to eat the best of British as well. So it's not, it's a mixture of a number of factors, Robert, if I'm going into those sort of details.
No, it's interesting you say about the parts that we don't eat much more. When we slaughter our pigs at home, we always say we can use everything apart from the squeak. And my grandfather was always a big fan of the trotters, so it's back to a different time and a totally different era, actually.
It is.
But it's good to hear about adding the value. And I was going to come on to the halal in a moment, actually. But you mentioned about the added value and also for the recipes. I remember back in the day when we used to do recipes on the television of the little snippets of the adverts where you put up whatever it was and those recipe ideas and if we look at a new generation of social media people, the snippets, the TikToks, the what have you, it is the attention to detail in a small presentation is probably where we maybe have to concentrate as well going forwards.
I mean, a short example of that would be the pulled pork. So, we led a pulled pork campaign not so long ago, and actually that generated sales. So it's thinking quite differently there as well, and that's what good. But also, putting the science behind that. So from a nutritionalist perspective, we've got lady got Kate Arthur that works in the team as well, working very closely with the British Nutrition Foundation as well. I think that's really important. So it's not just about the inspiration, but actually the importance that red meat, dairy, etc. actually brings to your diet as well. And I think that books campaign, I actually went down to the university. They had like a big site, and it's speaking to them, they were so positive about it. I think the demographic is definitely changing, and we need to capitalize on that. And we need to there's opportunities for us to, using our facts, using the evidence, using the data that is what we're about, is our USP as AHDB. Those are unique opportunities that we can't let pass by.
Well, that's all good to hear, Graham. It really is. We touched on the halal market for the lamb. I think the last time I read it was worth about £2 billion was the halal market. And anybody that sells lamb through the marketplace, through the auctions, can see the effect that has. So what has AHDB done to either work with people to promote that market? What sort of investment are you making at the moment?
Yeah. So it's a massively important market for us, and the really understanding the different demographic of those consumers. So Awal, who works for us, fantastic. You'll never meet a more positive person. So it's really great to have somebody like that. And there's many Awals in the whole of AHDB, and that's what really works. But been understand the Muslim community, understanding diversity of people across the UK, and being able to talk about this. And actually, it's been in livestock markets, in the ring, talking to farmers about the importance of the halal market as well. So it's not just from a consumer, but it's also from a farmer perspective as well. But it's an area that, if I'm honest, we've done a fantastic job so far. That is an area where I think we can definitely do it even more. And I know that Howell's absolutely fired up to do that, and I need to support him in making that happen. But it's an important area for us, but also about how we communicate, how we educate as well. But ultimately, halal accounts for 30% of lamb sales in the UK, so it is a very important market, certainly for our sheep farmers here in the UK. So, but there are definitely opportunities to grow that.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, and I think all the lamb producers on the webinar tonight will be very pleased to hear that. I had a couple of questions came to me this afternoon as I was driving back home, and they're probably a very similar ilk actually, and it goes on to I think we've talked about sharing data and what have you. One was from Arable Farm saying a number of years ago, arable farmers paid for research centres. And they were the only ones that had access to the data, and that data wasn't able to be spread wide. On a similar theme, I had a milk producer rang and asked, should professional organisations, i.e. consultants, have to pay for data produced by AHDB, because they will attribute a lot of the data that they're talking about to AHDB. And what's your thoughts on how the professionals pay for that or have access to that data?
You're tapping into my commercial.
I am indeed, Mr. Wilkinson. Yes.
Hey, Robert. So I know where you're heading with this question. I actually, I agree. I think there's a the role that we play in the independence that we offer, but ultimately a lot of the work that we do is then is used by others. And I think what you're looking at is there a value to that? And I think there is a value actually. I think what's important is that farmers and growers get access to that information. So we should never, underestimate the opportunity to be able to get that information to farmers and growers. Is there an opportunity to commercialise some of that, and return value, which will then enable us to do more as a Levy organisation? It's certainly something. I'm 7 months in, but I see there's definitely an opportunity there. And if you remember, the fourth area that I talked about was around organisational growth. There is without doubt opportunities there, where actually using our expertise, using our skill sets, where we can actually return a greater value. But we need to be able to extract some of that value as well, because it is going to continue to be challenged. And I think opportunities to bring in additional funding into the organisation without breaking our USP in the fact that we are independent. And I think that is something that I'm very, very mindful of. That's something that we can't change, our independence. That's important. But there are, I think there's definitely opportunities that we'll be looking into. And I know exactly where you mean with that question.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I could also touch on match funding as well from government, but bearing in mind we're in the season of budgets and things. But if we could commercialise some of that monies from other organisations that wanting the data, then that would allow AHDB a bigger purse, as it were, of monies to deliver more for the levy payer, which would be a huge help. Actually, it really would.
I mean, obviously, the funding that we get comes through from our levy payers, and one thing I'm trying to come up with as well, because I don't quite like the term levy payers. It sounds very transactional, but I know we have levy payers, but actually, I want to be able to create that relationship with them, where more of a partnership. As I mentioned earlier, I come from working with farmers for farmers kind of culture from a cooperative, and that's what I want to be able to develop. But we need to be able to demonstrate delivery and gain that trust from them before we go down that route. There are examples. We have a very strong relationship with DEFRA, so the baselining project. So they've recently invested in part of that baselining project. So there's examples where DEFRA are supporting us in areas and putting money in, which is obviously massively appreciated. But there is obviously opportunities for that that pot to be bigger, which enables us to work even harder and even better for our levy payers. I think as well, we should always be mindful of costs, and that is certainly something that I'm definitely focused on. So how we can work smarter, how we can use technology as well, I think is important, so that we can work smarter and faster. I think is important, and technology will play a bigger part in the future, and we need to be able to embrace that as an organisation.
Well, it's interesting you say about working smarter, and I say I've got another question to come on it in a moment. But I was at a conference today regarding the uplands, and they were showing how the app was working, so they can put everything in real time on the data by measuring the fields or taking pictures or what have you. And I thought that was absolutely phenomenal, the way that worked. And I've always wondered whether. And I saw this in Denmark when I used to visit with my milk producer group, that they had an independent organisation that used to collect all the data, whether it's medicine records, whether it be farm assurance. So it was all like a one-stop shop. And I always wondered whether, thinking as Robert Martin, whether this is something that AHDB could possibly do if we're talking about knowledge transfer, being independent and what have you. Something like that in the UK might have traction at some point as well, and possibly AHDB could be the vehicle for that. But neither do I want to put you in a difficult position, but I saw that working in another country and thought it was really good.
I've seen that working in other countries as well, Robert, and it is actually something that we are looking at. So from a sort of a data custodian model, so we're starting to develop some thinking around that, how that would work. But I've seen it work really well. You record something once, and it's used multiple times, but only providing that the farmer allows that to happen, and that's really important. But there is an element of duplication, and there's nothing more frustrating than having to record things numerous times. So being able to develop that kind of model now, we're starting to do some thinking on that, and ultimately it will require future funding for that. But I think it's a route that we have to go down, and whether it's AHDB, whether we are the organisation that to be able to deliver that is another question to have. But is it the right direction? Is it something that we should be going down? Yes. And are we spending time? We're actually starting to develop some thinking around that now. So we're on it, Robert.
well, that's good to know. It's just that I'm fortunate I'm able to travel to different countries, see what other producers are doing, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And then it's nice to come back to see how it would work in the UK, because duplication is one big issue. And if you have maybe 2 or 3 inspections and you can refer them all to one portal, to me, that seems a huge benefit of importance to me, because I only have to do it once. And then multiple agencies can take that data. So that was what I saw. But following on from that, there was a question came in that maybe HDB could follow the lead of the TFA on this and come out with a webinar. And this is back to releasing information to the I'm going to say levy payers, but you don't like that word now. And so that you have a webinar once a week, once a month, so the latest data comes out to the contributors to HDB first, before it is then released out to the wider public.
We're so what we've done is since arriving, clearly communication, how we communicate, is really important. So there's no point in doing lots of great work if we're not communicating it in the right way, that our farmers and growers, our levy payers, ultimately want it. And so we've done a piece of work where we've done numerous quantitative, qualitative research. We've done interviews, which we're just compiling at the moment, so that we can actually really start to think, how do we deliver, what are the best formats to deliver our communication, and recognizing that things are changing, that people are adapting their communication as well. And I think so the point that you raised there, I think, is an important one, because sometimes as well, I think there's examples where we're doing lots, and I think sometimes, like from a communication perspective, it might to some feel a little bit like a tsunami of communication, and actually we need to think more strategically how we deliver the best communication at the right time, in the right format, to our levy payers. And that's a piece of work that we're doing. It's so important. As I say, there's no point in doing all this great work if we're not getting it out there in the right format. So please bear with me and the team a little bit on that. We're compiling the research, but it's an absolute priority for us, because it's also a missed opportunity, if I'm honest, Robert. I think, and also sometimes if there's lots coming at you, then actually do you read it? Do you really take that in? So I think there's definitely things to come down the way very shortly on that as well. So quite excited about how we evolve, how we communicate with our levy payers. And that goes back to my first point around being laser focused on our levy payers. How do they want information? How best do they receive information? How we actually deliver that in the right and timely fashion.
Well, that's very good to hear, because as a levy payer, I've always wanted to see that happen. And maybe before the end of my farming career, I will see that. So that'll be rather good. I suppose I can bring George in on the back of this next question, if you want to come in, George. And it is, what immediate conclusions have you drawn from the governance review of Red Tractor and the wider review of farm assurance more generally? I don't know whether you want to kick off with that, Graham, first.
Yeah, so obviously we await the outcome of the assurance review. We've obviously submitted our response to that review. It's on our website, so we've made that accessible to all our levy payers. And I suppose ultimately we recognise the benefits of assurance, but I think it's also recognising that it's developed in a way where it adds value. And I suppose obviously there's questions as to whether there's the right levels of value coming out, and whether they're ending in the right pockets. And clearly, what we've just talked about as well, when it comes to actually delivering that assurance and the complexities, and is that that's another area where actually are there opportunities for synergies there to be able to make that whole process a lot smoother and a lot more simpler. But we await the outcome. There's nothing much we can really say. There's the full review, and we look forward to hearing the results from the commissioners. But I don't know whether George is going to add anything to that.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I think it comes down to the two words that you gave in your answer there about adding value.
Yeah.
So is Red Tractor adding value to our sector? And similarly, I think a lot of our members would ask the same question of AHDB. Is AHDB adding value to our sector? Because I think your last intake of levy was, what, £41 million last year?
Mm.
And the question that we sometimes get asked by our members is AHDB delivering £41 million of value back to the sector? And I think it's really important that, as you say, we have a gimlet eye approach on making sure that every pound that we spend is delivering that value back to the sector. And for us, as a membership organisation, our members have the opportunity once a year to think whether we are adding value to what for their businesses, because they get an invoice every year from us saying, "Do you want to be a member of the TFA for another year?" they don't have that option with you, and they don't have that option necessarily with Red Tractor because it's foisted upon them. So it's really, really important that we have a system which absolutely shows the value of both organisations.
So something that and it's something that working with the board as well. So how we evaluate the work that we do is key to, I suppose, the point that you're raising, George. And actually, what it helps me leading an organisation as well, and the board, is that we're prioritising our efforts. So I've been spending lots of time listening, and I'm going to always continue to listen. That's who I am. Now, when I'm listening, what happens is that I get a list of lots of things that AHDB should be doing, and the reality is, whilst I'd love to be able to do that, the reality is that that's not going to be possible. So making sure that we are prioritizing our efforts, and through really strong evaluation of the work that we're doing. And so it's something that we're looking at now as to how we can improve the evaluation, so that we can demonstrate that actually we are adding value. And I firmly believe that we are, but we need to absolutely continue and being able to deliver that and put numbers on it. So I talked to the team about it's an investment. It's that return on investment. I appreciate it's a levy, but I want to be able to demonstrate that for every £1 invested in AHDB, it's this is the return that it's delivering. And some of the areas it's quite easy to do in how we're able to generate that. Other areas it's a little bit more difficult, because it's some of the work that we do is about some of the forward looking. But even so, before we go into these areas, then there should be a firm evaluation. So that is certainly something that I'm doing. I'm being used to, I suppose, when I was at Arla, the evaluation always was down to a milk price. That's what it came down to. We're a slightly different organisation, but that's what I'm prioritising. I know it's certainly something that the board are absolutely focused on as well. So how we improve our evaluation and the work that we do helps us being able to demonstrate that value, and also prioritise the efforts that we put in, and that might mean that we're going to have to stop doing some stuff, because actually some other areas are going to return a higher value to our levy payers, and that stronger evaluation will help us.
No, well, that's very good to hear, and I think the I'm going to say levy payers. I can't say that anymore, Graham. It's really bugging me now. The people will appreciate what is being said. As ever,
there are examples there when from a marketing, the total of 8 million invested in annually from a beef and lamb perspective around reputation, but HDB exports ultimately generated £11.90 for every pound invested. So back to the point I was making to George, I think there's some areas where it's really easy to do. There's other areas that are a little bit more difficult, but that's where we need to be better. So that evaluation is certainly something that we need to prioritise and need to work on. And I think the levy pay, it's I don't want people to take this the wrong way. I want to create an organisation that is trusted, that is recognised as that delivers for British farmers, British levy payers. And I think how we develop that relationship, and I've been part of that process with a cooperative, and it takes time. So the levy payer terminology, we'll only change that through demonstration of delivery, that demonstration of trust. That's how we'll get there, and that's what I'm prioritising mine and the team's efforts on. And maybe at one point we can stop referring to levy payers because we'll have a different terminology. But yeah.
And Graham, I think that's a really important point, and one of the things that we have said many times about AHDB is that it should see itself and operate more like a membership organisation than it does a government department. And I think in the past it's been viewed a bit more as a bit of the state rather than a bit of the farming community. And obviously before your time, but AHDB had to react to the votes for the potato and horticultural sectors, which made those two sectors fold within the organisation. And there is a question that sometimes is asked of us about when does everybody else get a vote on what happens on AHDB? And maybe a question to you, Graham, would be, given all that you've said, and we recognise that 7 months in, there's a lot to do, and certainly the way in which you're approaching the work of AHDB is really encouraging. But when do you think you would be comfortable about giving your customers the opportunity to have a vote on whether they think AHDB is delivering?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, I suppose my ambition is ultimately that we're able to demonstrate that value, and I think what we're trying to do, and I think if I give an example of the baselining project, then we've got 170 pilot that is out there. We've got 500 farmers apply for that. By being able to demonstrate that leadership, being able to demonstrate that delivery, ultimately we get it right, then that the challenge around that is goes down. It's always going to be there, but clearly we've got the statutory instrument that we are a part of, as an arm's length body to DEFRA. But my priorities is ultimately being able to demonstrate that delivery and that value. And I think if somebody says, what's the most important thing, what you prioritize at the team, what is the most important thing, out of everything that I've said, out of the 4 key areas, out of everything that I'm saying, demonstrating that value is my ultimate priority, and that's what I'm focused on. That's what the team is focused on, and that's what we're here to do. And providing we're doing that, then hopefully our levy payers will see that, and it will create opportunities for us to grow, like we talked a little bit earlier in the podcast.
Well, as ever, time runs away on these webinars, and I'm very conscious that I got a telling off of Julia if I don't hold this to time, and I think that's probably a good point to end on. I would like to thank our guest speaker tonight, Graham Wilkinson, and our event sponsors, Roythorne Solicitors. But before we sign off, the TFA has a number of events in the next few weeks. The next month's webinar will be held on Thursday, the 14th of November, and it's building on the ROC Review recommendations. What can we expect from the Farm Tenancy Forum? And that night we're going to have guest speakers of Julian Sayers, the Farm Tenancy Chairman, and Mark Coleman, who is the TFA's Forum representative. We're also pleased to announce 2 round tables with the TFA. First is in Cambridge on the Wednesday, the 6th of November, starting at 7:30, while the second will be a breakfast meeting at Market Harborough on the 7th of November, starting at 10 a.m. Both meetings will be hosted by our Chief Executive, George Dunn, and we'll be able to offer some valuable opportunities for tenant farmers to engage directly with George and TFA local leads to discuss pressing matters, including current government agricultural policies, impacts of policy changes on the tenant sector, evolution of landlord and tenant relationship, implementation of the code of practice, and individual case discussions and specific advice. Finally, for those farming in Wales, we're holding an update and discussion on the new Sustainable Farming Scheme with Mark Alexander, the Welsh Government Deputy Director, Agriculture and Sustainable Development. Mark is a senior official within the Welsh Government who is responsible for delivering the Welsh SFI Farm Scheme. This meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 6th of November, starting at 7 p.m. at the Metropole Hotel at Landred Dodd. All 3 of these regional events are free to attend and open to any farmer who farms land they do not own. So whether you're a TFA member or not, you're welcome to join us. Light refreshments will be provided at each venue. However, places are limited, so advance registration is essential. Full details, including an online booking link, can be found on the TFA webinar, on the TFA website, event calendar. Alternative, call the head office and ask to speak to Julia. So all it takes is for me to finish off, and we hope that you found our webinar useful. We thank you for attending, and good night.